Hey, listeners, we are back with another episode of Real Talk with David, and I'm excited to bring to you today a guest that I am selfishly ready to learn from. His name is Curtis May. He's the host of the Practical Wealth Show podcast and the creator and owner of Practical Wealth Advisors. He's been helping people grow their wealth, protect their wealth for over 35 years, I believe he mentioned. I hope I'm not aging you there, Curtis, but
I was 12 when I got started. Yeah.
you 12 when you started.
Yeah,
So
12 years
without
old.
further ado, Mr. Curtis May, welcome to the show, man.
All right. Hey, David, thanks for having me.
Hey,
Excited to share.
I'm excited. So off air, we were joking around. So you're in Philly, and my listeners know I'm a huge New England Patriots fan, and I will never forget the Philly special. I'll never forgive you guys for the Philly special.
Neither will we.
Nick Foles is forever. Like I throw darts at him in my office. But anyway, tell everyone who you are, how you got into this business, and yeah, just bring us into who Curtis May is.
Okay. Long story short. So I'm from Philly, as you say, and married with 3 daughters. And I got into the business I actually got into the business in college. I realized the NBA was not looking for 5'11" shooting guards. So here I am barely on the team at this Division II school. And I'm fortunate, I'm blessed. My family's always been self-employed. So I was always looking for little hustles, and a guy showed me a check, said, this is what I made for he showed me a check for $400 and said, this is what I made for hours worth of work. I said, doing what? He showed me this little presentation. I said, if this knucklehead can do it, I can do it. And so I got my insurance license. And then a few years after that, I got my securities license, which I actually let my registrations go 20 years ago because I think, Wall Street is broken. But I've pretty much been doing it ever since. That was in 85, and I've been doing it ever since. And it was funny because I was typical, buy term investor difference, buy and hold. And then I read a little purple book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then that kind of rocked my world. It was like Morpheus gave me the red pill, and and I couldn't go back. I was like, all right, I woke up and I kept going down a rabbit hole, studying Austrian economics and all this other stuff. And that kind of brings me to, what we teach today, which is principle-based planning.
That's amazing. So you just referenced really quick Austrian economics.
Austrian economics. So there's 3 schools of, so there's a book that we teach called Becoming Your Own Banker. So there's 3 schools of economics. There's typical economics, which you learn in school if you study econ, is Keynesians, right? That's why I think we're in the financial mess that we're in, because it's like central planning BS. Okay. Austrians, if you're a real easy book that I'll give teenagers, is called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. If you really want to get a easy readable version of that. And it's more based on free market, and that economics is more philosophy than science. And it's really, economics is run the Greek root economos, which just means house manager, right? So it's how do you manage, you've got income coming in, you've got bills. How do you manage your scarce resources coming in your household? That is all economics is. We teach people you can't manage the economy, but you can manage your personal economy, right? Your production and consumption as a family. So from understanding that stuff, I try to get people to think macroeconomically, but control what you can control, but be aware of what's going on, because if you know what's going on, you'll know what to do.
Very cool. Okay, so I'm gonna have to pick up that book. You said it was Economics in One Lesson?
Right.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give that to my 8-year-olds for their birthday in a couple months, and they're gonna be just psyched. They're probably not gonna be too psyched, but
right. For 8-year-olds, I'd get them the Tuttle Twins. Okay.
The Tuttle Twins?
The Tuttle Twins. It's a whole book where he takes like Atlas Shrugged and all these books and makes them into children's books.
Okay.
iPencil. Cool. It's very cool. And awesome. So I have them, and I have my big kids reading to their younger sister, so I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
There you go. I love that. All right. So I want to talk first about you have this concept of 5 principles of personal finance. And I want to I'm just like really big about just like simplifying stuff for listeners. Because my listeners, they come from a host of backgrounds. They're either like super advanced in their real estate career, or they're just starting out, or their investing career, or they're just looking to purchase their first investment. And so I never want to like just dive into the deep end of the pool. I want to start like really basic and getting a foundation. I think your 5 principles like help us do that. So can you start by like walking us through what are the 5 principles of personal finance? And could we dive into each of them?
Yes. So let's talk about what are principles. See, most people don't even operate with principles. So if you read Ray Dalio's book, everybody operates. They have a belief system about money. And so as you develop principles, principles don't change, like 10 commandments. Those are principles, right? This, if you read The Richest Man in Babylon, the 7 cures for a lean purse, the 5 laws of gold, right? So those are principles. They have nothing to do with products. It's all about your belief system. And so as you begin to operate with principles, your money rules, for example, what properties do you like? What is it your RRR that you want? You get to set those so that you stay. And I know somebody that's a client of mine, a big real estate investor here in Philly. He only invests in West Philly. Okay, nowhere else, so he don't want to go, but he knows it like the back of his hands. He knows the values, he knows this and that. So, he's got his money rules. This is what he wants to make. This is what he's trying to do, right? So those are the principles. So we teach that there are 5 principles to personal finance. And here's another, I'll give you another book, is The Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, the 3rd book. One of the things from that is the financial plan comes before the investment plan. So I work with, mostly real estate investors and small business owners. And what I find is they skip steps because they just want to dive in to doing the thing, right? Because that's exciting. All right. I try to slow you down and speed you up. All right. So we can build a foundation, you can build your house on rock. So the 5 principles are this, and they're basic, right? Save. Okay. Save what? Save 15% or more of your gross revenue. So if you still work, I want 15%, 20% or more of your job income. And let me give you a hint, your 401k doesn't count. That's not saving, right? Savings needs to be liquid, accessible, safe, guaranteed, okay? Because you need utilization. Most people are too illiquid. So that's 1, save. 2,
Wait, before you get into number 2, why 15%? Where
so I kind of built out to The Richest Man in Babylon, where I was 15. Really, I want 20, but I'm trying to give them a middle. So I'll say 15 to 20 or more. Don't let my minimum be your maximum. But in The Richest Man in Babylon, the first lesson is part of all you earn is yours to keep, right? So y'all need to stamp that on your forehead, right? And he said 10%, but when the book came out, the dollar was still backed by gold, and it wasn't hardly inflation, and it said 10%. So I was like, all right, well, we need to do a little bit more than that in 2023. So we say 15.
Okay.
So
All right, cool.
okay. And the second principle is protection, maximum protection. So I call that playing defense, which is looking at, and I'll go a little more detail, but basically, insurances, asset protection, all that falls under, proper liability on your homeowners and car, umbrella coverages. Most people don't play defense. And I'll give you an example of that later if we want to go back into it. The third principle is what I call legacy, full replacement of assets at death, guaranteed. Okay. So you want to leave a legacy of wealth and wisdom. The 4th pillar is liquidity, 6 to 12 months of cash or cash equivalent and money that you can access. And then the 5th principle, see, most of your listeners are already in principle 5, which is velocity of money. And because there's 2 schools of thought in personal finance, there's the accumulation theory, which is what most people, so if you work and you hear the Daves and the Susies and that kind of stuff, or typical financial advice, they teach the accumulation theory, buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt, get a diversified portfolio of mutual funds. You hear stuff like the rule of 72 or rebalancing your portfolio. That's buy-term investor difference. Okay, all of that stuff, right? So velocity is looking at the world differently. So if you want to, we call it, so principle 5 is what we call the velocity method, where you're focusing on money moving, right? Cash, you're focused on cash flow. You're focused on leverage. right? Those are different, viewpoints. When we get into the four rules of institutions, I'll show you where they come from, because the accumulation theory doesn't serve you because it's not designed to generate cash flow. So when we get to velocity, so if you're listening, you're already investing, you're already into velocity. If you're doing the Burr method, if you're generating cash flow from assets, that's principle 5. What I do with the 5 principles is, all right, let's back up. Are you saving? Because they don't want liquidity. I want all my money to go into properties. Yeah, but you need access to capital. That's a fundamental, because you have to play defense. You can't have a plan that only works when the sun is shining, right? You got to have a plan. Stuff happens. And so our principles help people build a house on rock. And because planning, nobody has a working crystal ball, right? So what you do, planning is provisioning, right? You're going to die too soon. You got 3 problems. You're going to live too long, you're going to die too soon, you're going to get sick, right? So you have to play defense, okay? There's COVID things now happen that set precedent. And so who saw that coming? What plan had that in their plan, right? But if you follow the principles, you would have had 6 to 12 months of liquidity. So even if the government made it legal for people not to pay you rent, you still would have been fine.
Yeah.
Well, or you could have taken advantage of other people that didn't save and buy their properties for pennies on a dollar.
Well, and I was gonna say, to your point, I find that to be very true, and very true in the real estate agent space as well. Real estate agents, as a lot of entrepreneurs, they're notorious. We get these really big commission checks, and then we go out and it's like we've spent it before it's even come in. And so I love this concept of playing defense with your money. When the market shifted, I would put like the height of the market, around March of last year in 2022. And when that market shifted and we saw interest rates start to come up, I mean, it's really that analogy of the tide going out and like who actually has their shorts on. And what I have seen and what we've all seen is that when the years of plenty were happening, 2020, 2021 in the real estate space, cash was just going out and people weren't staying liquid. And so now, they're letting go of their assistants. They don't have that pipeline of business. And so they're having to cut like crazy because they don't have the cash, or that lifestyle creep happened.
Yes.
And they can't support it. And it's putting them in a bad. So I think that
I work a lot with that. That's, with agents, with people that are in business, because it's because one, it's so funny because I just talked to a realtor client now. She's slow. And so I find half the time my first meetings, like if they're in business, I'm their de facto marketing coach. Okay. Because because what you'll find is now, it's easy to make money when you put a list of house and then 15 minutes later, you get 5 offers, $20,000 over asking.
Right.
Okay. So you don't know how to do business in a bad market. You haven't exercised your marketing muscles. You don't know how to attract people to you. You don't have a unique selling proposition. And so you're a commodity, right? So now but if you stay in, half the people are going to get washed out. You're not going to renew their license this year, right? Yep. You know what I mean? And so, but if you saved, if you protected, if you, legacy is just making sure that if you're not making your family's covered, but the liquidity is huge, right? Mm-hmm. Managing cash flow, creating what I call a lifestyle ceiling, right? So if let's say you set your ceiling at $10,000 a month. So if you have a $30,000 a month, you don't go buy a new car. You don't go, you see what I mean? The assistant, or you cutting back on your marketing or websites. Marketing is the keys to the kingdom. You don't cut back on that. You don't cut back on the assistants. Like you should have been saving for. I set aside 2 months of my income so that if things are slow, but I work on marketing, so they ain't slow. That's not an option. You could control that. That's not a function of economics. That's a function of your marketing. Okay. And so I have that set aside because I still need my assistant. Because if I don't have an assistant, I am an assistant. I have 2, exactly. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So let's go back to principle number 1 then real quick, because okay. I think a lot of people are just stuck here. And I think a lot of people like we hear you say, especially my audience who, some of them are in the position of living paycheck to paycheck while they're figuring out this market. And they go, how in the world am I going to get to 15% savings? That's just a wild number. I've never done that. How do you help your clients actually even start the first step of saving?
Yeah, so we take people through a process called cash flow mapping, right?
Okay.
So we cash flow map. So it's similar to, so I've kind of taken the idea of profit first. So I would get that. There's Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, and I
Love
think
that book.
there's Profit First for real estate agents
Yep.
and investors, right? And so we kind of got our own software, and I've kind of integrated that with another strategy I teach called infinite banking. But let's just start with that, because that's where the game is won and lost, right there, what you asked me, right? So when money hits your account, now you've got to start where you can start. That was a good, like I say, I have, like, for example, I have an income account. So all my commissions go into account, right? So now off of that, I just made a decision that part of all I earn is mine to keep. So when you get your check, I have 1, 2, 3 accounts. Okay. So I have my wealth capture, which you would call profit and Profit First, right? So now I sweep, it could be 5%. You got to see what that is, right? So you sweep 5 or 10% into the thing. You have to pay yourself first, because that's the money that your down payment, so you can create wealth. You can't be selling all these houses and you don't know damn real estate, right? And I hope I didn't offend anybody, right? But yes, I did. I hope I did.
No, tell it how it is.
So now, right. So now I set aside, this is my number. I started with 10 up to the 15. I set aside 15% for taxes, for my estimated taxes, right? So that's a separate account, right? So when you get a $10,000 check, boom, 1,500 goes here, 1,500 goes into the tax account. I personally, now you have to figure this out for yourself. I run my business on 35% of revenue. So I actually will set aside 35%, and I actually have an S corp. So I just run payroll for that and put it over to the household. And then, so you got to separate your cash flow, right, from your personal. You really have to also look at your personal expenses and figure out, this is what people don't do, David. They don't figure out, what does your life cost, right? Your house, your kids, your food, your groceries, because the business is there to serve you. So the business has bills and has a cost, but you've got to save money. I would save it off my gross, and then I would pay myself, or if you're, LLC or something, do owner's draw, but you've got to figure out what your life costs so that you're not starving to death. Because if you can't pay yourself, let's say you need $6,000 a month to live off of, you need to calculate that, and you need to make sure that the business is doing that, because if it can't do that, that's your business talking to you, and you've got to fix your marketing, or maybe you got some waste there you got to look at, right? And then I personally try to run our business on 35% of my gross revenue for operations.
Yep. Okay.
And but you got to look at that. See, that's where you have to adjust it, because like if you've got a big office and you got staff, then that's a different number for operations. See, so right. I've streamlined, because all my meetings are virtual now, and I have an office. My wife we're self-employed, so she has an office. We share an office, but I may go in once a week. So I'm working here from my home office, in my bedroom slippers. And and I've got 2 assistants, right? And so we're all virtual. And so, but that's what, so I focus on, making the car go, but I also am meticulous. I look at my numbers every week. Like, I'm anal about my P&L, look at my profit and loss. How much did I save? We teach our people to look at their, just back under velocity. What I'm looking at is, how much did you save?
Yep.
Personal and business, right? From the business, but in your business liquidity, that's building up your liquidity. I want you to look at how much passive income are you developing? Like, so whether it's you buying a rental, let's say you want to buy 2 properties a year. I think you have to become financially free. See, the goal of the 5 principles is to help people become and remain financially free. So they're not just like stuff I threw out there, right? The goal is to teach principles to help you become, and more importantly, remain financially free. And financial freedom is a capability, right? Which means you have passive income greater than your expenses. or passive income twice your expenses. We call that in our system getting to a position of FU.
Hey, I like that.
So we want to get you to the glorious position of FU, passive income twice your expenses. And then the other thing I focus on, how much did I grow my business? And I focus on that correlate. How much did I grow my passive income? How much did my revenue grow? And you get what you focus on.
Yeah.
That's a long answer, but
I say what you focus on expands, right?
Yes.
Like, and that's, I think that's true. I actually cut my teeth in business in the insurance world. And so this is a topic that I think listeners probably get annoyed because I harp on this so much, but one of the principles is maximum protection. And what I find is that most consumers, most people out there are just they're underinsured. And so, like, how do you think about insurance? How are you advising your clients when it comes to, the insurance aspect of these 5 principles?
So the principle is maximum. Okay. So most of the insurance in the financial planning industry really is based on needs based, right? You don't need insurance. Okay. You don't need life insurance. Life insurance is a want, right? So, but what we do is we take people through a process. I actually start with auto and home, right? So let's say you're out and about and most people are underinsured there too. I'll say, well, tell me about your car insurance. Oh, it's with so-and-so company. And well, what do you have? I got full coverage. That doesn't mean anything. I was telling somebody had a full coverage and they had 15, 30, and $10,000 worth of property damage. And so I had to break that. Well, if you were in an accident, do you understand if the damages to the other person, which is there to protect you, was over $30,000, they're coming after your stuff, your nice house, your nice car, your savings. So the liability, same thing with your house. So you want 100% of your house, or do you want 2/3 of your house? So you have to have, so that's the concept. We try to walk people through that. Do you have what most people don't have, umbrella coverage, right? What if you get sued? You want to, oh, I got an LLC. Well, LLC is a limited liability company. So your first line of defense needs to be insurance. You can get umbrella, and it might be $500 a year. It's nothing, but nobody teaches you what they are and how they work. So you got to have an integrated strategy. What is your most important, just all is, health and that kind of stuff. But so I'll tell you that where I see people miss it. What happens if you get hurt? Your most important asset is your ability to work, right? So that's disability insurance. And you're more likely, 3 times more likely, especially guys, to become hurt and disabled and can't work for 6 months, 2 or 3 years, than you are to die. But less than 20% of families have disability insurance, right? So I make sure now I talk about it when I walk through their protection component. And then with their life insurance, most people are uninsured and they're worrying about, what's better, term or whole life or universal life. Listen. You know what the best insurance is? The one that's enforced when you die. Okay.
I like that. Yeah.
Right. So if you not if, it's when. Okay. So don't die for free. But the point is, what you want to do is, if you're
I've never heard that before.
That's a criticism. That was mine. Okay.
Criticism. All right.
And don't die for free. And but what happens is, so let's say you're between 18 and 40. You can have the insurance, it's called human life value. So this is what you're thinking about. So if you need to now, so let's just say this. So take your annual income and multiply it by 25. Okay. If you're over 40 to 50, take your annual income and multiply it by 20. Okay. If you're over 50, the insurance company will let you have your annual income. It's over 50, right? 15. And if you're over 60, times 10. Right. So that's a gauge. So if you look at, Curtis, like, I got insurance, I got 500,000. I said, well, what do you make a year? I make 90,000. And I give them that example because I don't want to tell them, you need to see it. Now, most of the time you're going to, not to get too product oriented, but most of the time you're going to solve with term. Okay. But term is a temporary fix. What I specialize in, I'm not a big fan of universal life. That's another thing. But because what's my third principle? Full replacement of assets at death. Guaranteed. Okay. So the only one that guarantees everything to happen is whole life. Okay. So now most people they present it wrong because I do something called infinite banking. So most of my people, they borrow against their properly structured dividend paying whole life insurance, and they store their emergency funds there. We get our down payments for there. I've got people that with a couple 100,000 of cash value. So when they're investing, they got enough capital to eliminate the hard money lender. They just are financing the whole deal themselves, and they pay themselves back out their cash out. But think about this. If you have that liquidity where you can now access it without what I call liquidating it. So if you save it up, you take it back out, you save it up, you take it back out. So insurance allows you to employ a strategy called collateralization. So you don't have to liquidate, you can collateralize, right? And so what that allows you to do is use it without using it, and your money always goes forward. So you see they're integrated because people don't understand opportunity costs, which is when you take it out, you're not understanding how much you lost by always putting it in and taking it back out. So those are some of the principles that we show. And then I actually will show them in their money what the opportunity cost is, because most people think the key is investing, to create wealth. But what I take the opposite approach is that you want to become more efficient with money, right? So there's more opportunity in minimizing the losses in your life than there's trying to pick winners. And so, one, manage cash flow, like we're talking about. Two is what you want to do, and this is what we help people do, is to identify, reduce, or eliminate wealth transfers, right? Transfer is money going that's unknowingly that you have unnecessarily mean they can be stopped if you know what they are, right? And so a transfer is money leaving your asset column going to somebody else's asset column, okay? And so, if you got a buck, it's got holes in the bottom, instead of just running around trying to, turn up the faucet, let's plug the holes first, right? And so we look at 5, right? Outside of cash flow management, how you pay your mortgages. So when people want to get 15-year mortgages and pay their house off early, all that's a complete waste of money. In today's where our dollar is based on debt, okay? And so you got a 4% mortgage and you're trying to send extra payments. Why would you do that? We have a saying, don't hurry to a whooping, right? So,
I need a book of criticisms.
Right, a criticism, right? And so I'll just hit these real fast, right? So how you pay mortgages, taxes, number one, wealth transfer. Okay. So if you're selling, there's a bunch of stuff that you need to keep good records, right? So you need to track your mileage and all that kind of stuff. Get with a good accountant. And no, yeah, and so not somebody that does your taxes. You need a strategist that you're meeting 2 or 3, 4, 5 times a year. Not a historian that you take your stuff to at the end of the year and do my taxes for me. That's a tax preparation. Okay, but that doesn't save you money because we're
gonna graduate from that.
Yeah, right. So you got to get past that. Okay, y'all are successful people. You're past that. The third one is how you fund qualified plans. Okay, so a lot of people don't understand qualified plans: 401ks, IRAs, SEP IRAs, 403bs. They're not, all that glitters is not gold. Let's just say that. So we get into how they work, really how they work. And then, all right, you maybe want to use them, but there might be other things you could do. All right. The fourth one is how people fund education. There's big wealth transfers with that, with 529 plans and such. And then how you finance things, what we call major capital purchases, which we define as anything you can't pay for in full within your monthly cash flow. And so what we teach is don't pay a current life, don't drain the tank, or don't liquidate your capital to pay a current lifestyle expense. And that's costing you a lot of money. So that's kind of stuff. I know I just threw a lot out there real fast, but that's
all like, I mean, just really good stuff. I mean, thinking about, anytime you move large sums of money from, one thing into another, like, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is like you're interrupting the compounding effect. And when you interrupt that, it has way more like long range effects than just like what we.
And people don't understand that. That's huge, right? Compound interest works best over time, uninterrupted, right? So every time you save it up, or I'm gonna withdraw 20 grand for a down payment, or I've got to do such and such, or you're interrupting compounding, and you never catch up. And see, so when we teach the we call it the private reserve strategy, we help people. You can kind of have your cake and eat it too. You can save it, but there's a ways to access it without liquidation, and you can do the other thing that you want to do and still have your money working for you uninterrupted.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the core of our strategy, is to show people where we save the money. Let's save it so you can make another way to create velocity. Principle 5 is through simultaneous use. So what if you could store your capital somewhere where, yes, you're focused on buying or building cash flowing assets, or you should be, you can also have your dollar do 4 to 5 jobs simultaneously. So we call that creating velocity through simultaneous use. And this is actually what our firm specializes in, how to do that.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned at the very, very beginning. I mean, you referenced that you thought that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think it basically was like Wall Street's broken. And
Wall Street's broken.
I want to understand more of what like you mean by that. I mean, you have these like, you call them 4 rules of like traditional banks and Wall Street and why they work against you. Like what did you mean by that statement?
Okay, so let's start with the end in mind. So your goal is to become, most people ask them, is your goal to become financially free? And they go, yes. Okay, I said, well, let's define that. And I'll make them tell me, and they're like, oh, I want to be debt free. I want my own business. Well, none of that's part of it, right? So the goal is passive income from your assets greater than your expenses, so you can live in the future like you live today. That's the objective. Okay. So now let's look at traditional planning. So here are the 4 rules that govern all financial advice. So if you were David, so let's role play. So let's say you were opening up, you're the head of Bank of America or Vanguard, or you just created Dave's fund company, right? And so now first thing you want to do is attract me to deposit money in your institution.
Capital. Yeah.
Right.
I need
so now that's one. So now how often do you want that?
Regularly,
like every paycheck,
every week, every bi-week,
right?
Yeah.
Right. And how long do you want me to leave it in your institution?
A long time, because I make money on those deposits while they're sitting there.
Because your revenue is based on what? Assets under management and charging you management fees over a long period of time.
Yes.
Okay. And then when do you want me to take it out?
Well, never.
Never, right? Never, right? Or as slow as possible.
Yeah.
All right. So now, how does that help you become financially free? Because is any of that designed to develop cash flow for your family?
Not in particular.
Yeah. No, right? So now, I'm not saying you don't need to use financial institutions. You have to restructure them so that they work on your behalf. But if you buy it like it's taught to you, then just playing the money game transfers your wealth to the institutions. Okay. And so you've just got to recognize, I'm not throwing them under the bus. I'm just saying, just recognize it. So when you're taught to buy and hold, Wall Street doesn't buy and hold. They're what's that? The GameStop thing. They're moving money, right? So you're giving them money. So even when it's going down, they're saying, listen, just continue to dollar cost average, but they're micro trading on the second, right? They tell you to pay your house off early. You get a cheaper rate for getting a 15-year mortgage, right? But what you're doing is, aren't you creating more cash flow and velocity for the banking institution? So when it comes into them, what are they doing? Loaning it back out to somebody else, creating velocity, right? They tell you to get out of debt, which helps you transfer your money to the bank faster. But they're focusing on leverage, right? And you know what I mean? And then so they'll teach you to rent term insurance, but most institutions, banks, big companies, they do something called BOLI, B-O-L-I, which they buy permanent insurance as so that's what makes up the majority of their tier 1 capital, right? Whole life insurance. So now, but here's the funny thing. Those strategies, I call them corporate finance strategies, that works in personal finance, right? So you can do the opposite of buy and hold, dollar cost average, get out of debt. You can do what they do. So my basic message is, listen, I've just discovered this. I didn't make it up. I'm not that smart. I have no original thoughts. All right. I just kind of, now I'm mad though, because I taught the other stuff. I was like Dave on steroids, right? For like the first 15 years of my career. And so now I'm pissed. So I'm trying to tell anybody, listen, think, because I'm not trying to tell people what to think. I want them to think.
Yeah.
This is your money, right? And it's not that complicated. See, the whole Wall Street message is you're not smart enough. You don't have the time, the temperament, or the training to personally manage your money. So in so many words, all their marketing basis says, give your money to us. You just go to work, just, you don't have to worry about this stuff. We'll take care of it. Meanwhile, they charge you fees. I have a talk I give called The Magic of Compound Fees, right? The darker side of compound interest, right? Because if let's say the fund is doing well, you got $100,000 in. Well, if it goes up to $1 million and you're getting charged a 1.5% management fee, you're losing a lot of money because of the money you're paying in fees. So the success is costing you a hell of a lot of money, but people don't understand that stuff. Nobody digs deep. You got to even find the sales charges.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So it's just awareness. Awareness is the first step. So if you're aware that the transfers are happening, then you can identify them. You can look to reduce them or eliminate them altogether. So, I consider myself a financial educator, and I help people implement. But my first goal is when I work with people, it's education.
Well, and I so appreciate, and I'm so aware of that in our conversation today, Curtis. And you've delivered you've delivered like really rapid fire all these concepts. I think that what I love is that my listeners are thinking now. They're thinking about like, how can I do things differently? How should I be looking at things differently? I have this saying, not original to me, but it's popular in my company. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And that's what you've really challenged us to do. And we could talk about it and go way deeper, and we could go into infinite banking and like the entirety of the mechanics around that. It's all super valuable stuff. But I think for the purposes of today's show, I think if heading into, we're recording this roughly around tax time. People are thinking about taxes. They're thinking about preservation of capital. And I think if you as a listener will just take this information and ask yourselves simple questions like, how am I mapping my cash flow? Do I have a cash flow goal? Do I know what I need in terms of protection? Like maybe you're not close to that 25 times your annual income and you have to talk to an expert. Like I want you to think both offensively about your money, but probably first you've got to think defensively, especially in the economy that we're sitting in right now. Curtis, I want to transition. What was that?
Defense wins championships.
That's right. And we couldn't defend the Philly special, and we lost. Full circle. So I want to transition us into the last segment of our show. It's the same 3 questions I ask every guest. I call it 3, 2. I can't do my fingers. 3, 2, 1, action. You're on the hot seat in your home office. You ready for this?
Yes.
All right.
I'm ready.
Well, I'm excited for question number 1 because you are a very well-read individual. You've already like given us many books in today's conversation. But what is the one book that has had the biggest influence on your business, and why?
It's like 1 and 1A.
Oh, I'll let you cheat.
All right. So really, what's opened the door was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then from that led me to Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash.
Okay.
So that's really the book because it's based around that stuff. And then being the money nerd that I am, working my way through the bibliography of his book, Creature from Jekyll Island and Economics in One Lesson, and just really understanding how the world works. Confessions of an Economic Hitman, all that stuff. So I'm like, all conspiracy theory out,
Awesome. Very cool. We'll link that up in the show notes. Question number 2, who has been most influential on your business and why?
Good question. It's stages, right? It goes through stages. I'll tell you what changed my business is I realized what business I was really in, which is the marketing business. So I would say Dan Kennedy.
Yeah.
Now like the 2023 version is Russell Brunson.
Yep.
And okay, I went to Funnel Hacking Live last year. So those guys, that thing just from what's helped my business really excel was realizing what business I was in. So that was very influential because before that I was struggling. My income up 1 month, down the next month, and really committing to, and it took 4 or 5 years for it to kick in, but I'm tenacious because I want to win. I want to be able to serve more people. So I got to get to more people and be able to stay in business to serve them. So I would say the marketing part, because marketing is the keys to the kingdom. That was huge for me.
That's super cool. So the third and final question, ideas are shit if they aren't executed on. And so I'm all about challenging listeners to take action on what they've heard. From our conversation today, if there's one thing that you could challenge all listeners to go out and do right now to move the business, move the needle forward on their personal finances, what would it be?
Manage your cash flow. Tell your money where to go instead of asking where it went. Just if you just set up one account, set up we call it your wealth capture account. And then I don't care if it's 5%, 10%, just every check you get, just sweep 10% of that into an account. It's separate. You're separate from your bills. This is your wealth capture. And so if you do that, and learn to live on 90% or 85% of your income, it'll change your life. What to do with it is another step, but I don't care about that right now. I just care that you get saving and paying yourself first. And that's the first step to it. All wealth and velocity starts with saving. So if you could do that, you'd be dangerous.
Awesome. Very cool. Hey, Curtis, I think my listeners absolutely loved our conversation today. They want to connect with you. They want to find more of your content. Where can they go to get connected with you?
So you can go to our website, practicalwealth.net or practicalwealthsolutions.net, and all of our content. And, you can have a complimentary consultation. Somewhere on there is a link we have a book called Budgeting Stinks. They're redesigning as I speak. I don't know where it is now. And, but we can talk about the cash flow mapping because we have actually a program on that for business owners and families. And so that's all we call it our funnel hub, where all this stuff is set up at. And you can also, if you want more of the madness that is Curtis, go to the Practical Wealth Show, or either go to YouTube, search for the Practical Wealth on YouTube. And we do a lot of screen shares, a lot of education. And follow me on IG, and you can go to Linktree, and it'll take you to some of the same places if you're a big IG person.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I've had fun with today's conversation, Curtis. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was fun. I know I talk fast, so y'all got to slow it down, and
we'll play at 0.8 speed.
Right.
We'll go from there.
You got to go back. I gave y'all a lot of writer downers. So if you will take one thing and get the books and read 8 to 10 pages a day, you'll be dangerous, because you always have to sharpen the saw. You have to get better.
Oh, for sure. One of my favorite lines from today was "Don't die for free."
Don't die for free.
Don't die for free. All right, man. Well, until next time, I appreciate you. Thanks for being on the show. And listeners, thanks so much for your support. If you haven't left us a rating and review, that is how I can bring more guests like Curtis to you each and every week, bringing you high levels of value. So smash the subscribe button, leave us a rating and review, share this with your network. And until next time, go play all in.